What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews, exclusively here as always on the Casa D18 Studios channel. I, of course, am your host, the Renegade JJ Williams, and today we kick off another week of John Wayne Westerns, this time with the epic The Searchers, starring, of course, John Wayne, alongside Jeffrey Hunter, Vera Miles, Ward Bond, Natalie Wood, Olive Carey, Harry Carey Jr., Walter Coy, Lana Wood, and Patrick Wayne. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me here once again for another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews. As I said in the introduction, we're here today to kick off another week of John Wayne Westerns, and it's going to be The Searchers here today. And our movie takes place in 1868 as Ethan Edwards returns to the home of his brother, Aaron, in West Texas following an 8-year absence. Now, Ethan has fought in the Civil War on the side of the Confederacy, and in the 3 years since that war ended in 1865, Ethan has also fought in the Second Franco Mexican War. Ethan has in his possession a lot of gold coins of an uncertain origin, as well as a medal from the Mexican campaign that he gives to his 8-year-old niece, Debbie. Now, as a former Confederate soldier, Ethan is asked to take an oath of allegiance to the Texas Rangers, but he refuses. Shortly after Ethan's arrival, cattle belonging to his neighbor, Lars Jorgensen, are stolen, and Reverend Captain Samuel Clayton leads Ethan and a group of rangers in order to recover the cattle. After discovering that the theft was a Comanche ploy to draw the men away from their families, they return to find that the Edwards homestead is in flames. Aaron, his wife Martha, and their son Ben are dead, and Debbie and her older sister Lucy have been abducted. After a brief funeral, the men set out in pursuit. When they find the Comanche camp, Ethan recommends a frontal attack, but Clayton insists on a stealth approach in order to avoid killing the hostages. The camp turns out to be deserted, and further along the trail, the men ride into an ambush. Despite fending off the attack, the Rangers are left with too few men to fight off the Comanche effectively, and they return home, leaving Ethan to continue his search for the girls with only Lucy's fiance, Brad Jorgensen, and Debbie's adopted brother, Martin Polly. Ethan finds Lucy brutally murdered and presumably raped in a canyon near the Comanche camp. In a blind rage, Brad rides directly into the camp and is killed as a result. When winter arrives, Ethan and Martin lose the trail, so they return to the Jorgensen ranch. Martin is enthusiastically welcomed by the Jorgensen's daughter, Lori, and Ethan finds a letter from a trader named Futterman who claims to have information about Debbie. The next morning, Ethan leaves without Martin as he would rather go alone, but Lori reluctantly provides Martin with a horse so that he can catch up. At Futterman's trading post, Ethan and Martin learn that Debbie has been taken by Scar, the chief of the Nayeka band of Comanches. A year or more later, Lori receives a letter from Martin describing the ongoing search. In reading the letter aloud, Lori then narrates the next few scenes in which Ethan kills Futterman for trying to steal his money, and Martin accidentally buys a Comanche wife who runs away when she hears Scar's name. Later on, she is among the dead that are found by Ethan and Martin, who were a portion of Scar's band that were murdered by soldiers. In New Mexico, they find Debbie after 5 years, now an adolescent, living as one of Scar's wives. She says that she has become a Comanche and she wishes to remain with them. Ethan would rather see her dead than living as a Native American. So Ethan tries to shoot her, but Martin shields her with his body, and a Comanche wounds Ethan with an arrow as they escape. Although Martin tends to Ethan's wound, he is furious with him for attempting to kill Debbie. Meanwhile, Charlie McCory has been courting Lori in Martin's absence. Ethan and Martin arrive home just as Charlie's wedding is about to begin. After a fist fight between Martin and Charlie, a nervous Yankee soldier, Lieutenant Greenhill, arrives with news that Ethan's friend Mose Harper has located Scar. Clayton leads his men to the Comanche camp, this time for a direct attack, but Martin is allowed to sneak in ahead of the assault in order to find Debbie, who welcomes him. Martin kills Scar to save Debbie, and Ethan scalps him. Ethan then locates Debbie and pursues her on horseback. Martin chases them desperately, fearing that Ethan will shoot her. Instead, Ethan sweeps her up into his arms and takes her back to the Jorgensen Ranch, where Martin reunites with Lori. While everyone else enters the house, Ethan departs the homestead just as he arrived, completely alone, as our movie comes to its end. This is the only John Wayne movie I had ever seen prior to Rio Bravo last month for movies that star musicians and all the movies I'm doing this month. I took a film class in college, and the professor showed us The Searchers as one of the movies that he showed throughout the semester. I remember watching it then and being kind of bored with it because I felt like it just dragged way too long. Watching it again this time, while there are still a few points in the film where I feel it drags, maybe it's having watched some of these other John Wayne movies prior, but I feel like overall the story flows so much better than, let's say, The Big Trail or even Hondo. I wouldn't say it flows as good as Stagecoach, but a lot better. You know, it's right up there on par with, just a little bit less than Stagecoach as far as flow. And I think that's only because Stagecoach was an hour and a half and this one was once again 2 hours. But I feel like the more we're going deeper into these John Wayne movies, the pacing is just getting better. It's still a 2 hour movie, a lot of story, a lot of exposition, a lot of character depth and development. But I just feel like there's not as many dead beats as there are in The Big Trail and in Hondo, respectively. I feel like everybody in the film did a great job. Natalie Wood, of course, in this, you know, I know her best from Rebel Without a Cause, which was the year prior to this. And then, of course, Miracle on 34th Street. A few years after this, she would be Maria in West Side Story. So this was like a pivotal, you know, middle of her career role for her, having been the little girl, Susie, in Miracle on 34th Street, and then growing up to be Maria in West Side Story. This was a pivotal time for her, you know, again, hot off the heels of Rebel Without a Cause. Then was this. She was definitely making moves and making good moves, in my personal opinion. But that's neither here nor there. Once again, we had Ward Bond in this. Ward Bond was also in Hondo. So he's here, Bert from It's a Wonderful Life. So this movie, we've effectively got someone from Miracle on 34th Street and someone from It's a Wonderful Life in this film, arguably two of the most iconic classic Christmas films. But yeah, I mean, this is a John Ford film. You can tell again by the landscape, the cinematography, some of the shots, and again, I mentioned this with Stagecoach and to a lesser extent with Hondo. Back in this time, these westerns were more about the cinematography and the scenery and the backdrops and the scope than it was the acting and the story, except for some of these John Wayne movies, because the stories have been consistent. They've been deep, they've been meaningful. They haven't just been some fluff script. Some of them have gone too long. Some of them could have definitely benefited from some trimming and editing, but overall, solid stories all across. This is no exception. This is one of those pinnacle roles for me. When I think of John Wayne, I think of The Searchers. Partially that's because it's the only one I'd really been introduced to prior to doing these films, but still, this is what I think of. What about you guys? Let me know. When it comes to The Searchers, I gave The Big Trail 2 stars. I gave Stagecoach, I think, 3.5. I gave Hondo, I want to say 3. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. For The Searchers, I'm giving it 3.5 as well, only because there were some parts that dragged slightly. I feel like it could really benefit from, we'll just say 10 minutes trimmed off of this film. And I think this movie would move so much better, unlike some of the others where I think we could get rid of like a half hour. What do you guys think of The Searchers? Let me know. If you're watching the premiere, leave your thoughts and comments over here. If you're watching on demand later in the day, leave your thoughts and comments down here. Let's have that conversation, that discussion, that debate, that interaction that I'm always asking you guys for in the comments below. And make sure you guys tune in tomorrow, right here to the Casa D18 Studios channel, as we once again open up the doors to Stat Boy Sports Bar, featuring Dory Lou. The food is hot, the beer is ice cold, and the seats are warm, so pull yourself up a bar stool and engage your barkeeps in conversations about professional sports. Just as a note, this is going to air at a special start time tomorrow. Pay no mind to the times on the image. This is going to be at 9 o'clock Pacific in the morning, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern tomorrow. Statboy has work. I have commitments in the evening. Jeff has commitments that's going to keep him from producing. So we're doing a special 9 a.m. Pacific start time, noon Eastern start time for Statboy Sports Bar. And then, of course, later in the day, it will be the flagship show of the multiverse of media, talk wrestling, or anything with Jeff Meacham. 10:05 p.m. Eastern, 7:05 p.m. Pacific, immediately following NXT for the East Coast, immediately preceding NXT for those of us on the West Coast. And then, of course, we will be back on Wednesday, right here on Renegades Reviews, for another brand new review of a John Wayne Western. We're going to be discussing The Comancheros, starring John Wayne, Stuart Whitman, Ina Balin, Lee Marvin, Bruce Cabot, Patrick Wayne, Joan O'Brien, and Richard Devon. You don't want to miss out on any of that content right here on the Casa D18 Studios channel, on the Jeff Meacham Network, across the Jeff Meacham Network multiverse of media, Statboy Sports Bar featuring Dory Lou at a special time, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. Talk wrestling, the Comancheros. We've got so much more in store for you over the course of this month on Renegades Reviews on the Casa D18 Studios channel. So make sure you smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, make sure that notification bell is turned on so you don't miss out anytime a video drops right here on the Casa D18 Studios channel or anytime we go live, as is the case with Stat Boy Sports Bar, Talk Wrestling, Open Mic Night, pay-per-view PLE coverage, etc. Share these videos with your family, friends, loved ones, coworkers, movie fanatics, cinephiles in your life, fans of John Wayne, fans of Ward Bond, fans of Vera Miles, fans of Natalie Wood. Anybody you can think of that would enjoy this content in this video, share it with them. It's the only way we're going to keep my visibility up in YouTube's algorithms now that we are, in fact, a monetized platform. Thank you once again to everybody that joined me and tuned in here today. It means so much more to me than you guys will ever know. And I will see you guys next time.
And now, preview time. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.